Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. And as you've already seen in the title, it's time for a tier list. Was anybody ever a fan of like what culture back in the day, and Ross would have the "It's John O'Clock" feature? It's like, I should have one for a tier list. It's tier list time or so. I don't know, but everybody should be going nuts whenever it's a tier list in this channel because it's a favourite of yours. You've all wanted this. Well, no, you some of yous. So it's time to do it. Let's do this. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, but welcome back to the channel. We're on the road to 50,000 subscribers hopefully in 2024, so if you haven't, it's absolutely free. Jump down below and press those buttons. It'd be a great help to me in the channel. But tier list time. I've seen a few of you asking for this over the course of the last few live streams I've done in the comments section of my videos. It's the halfway point in the season. We've reached the winter break, which means it's time to sit down and evaluate how the Celtic squad have done. Until there's more concrete news out there to talk about transfer rumours and the rest, we may as well talk about things that actually have a bit of substance to it. And that's evaluating the players over the course of the opening stages to this season. We've done this a wee bit earlier on. I think it was at the first international break, but a lot of things have changed since then. Celtic went through a rocky patch of form where they lost to Kelly and Hearts back to back. We also managed to beat Rangers in the derby game. So opinions on players have been up and down this season, to say the least. You know what it's like being a Celtic fan? If you're winning, then you've got the best team on the planet. If you're losing, it's crisis time and everybody has to go. I'm going to try my absolute best to sit here today and talk about each player subjectively, honestly, and, you know, as accurately as I possibly can, while also sticking to my own opinion. I'm going to try and keep it my opinion only. I'm not going to let the outside and the social media determine where I'm putting everybody in this column. So we'll see how that goes. On that note, we should probably just get right into it, shall we? Here it is. We know how this works by now. I don't need to explain how these things go. But this time round, I've gone for 6 different columns to try and summarise players' seasons. Now, as always, that's a little bit difficult because there's some players who probably are in like in-between columns of their own. Like somebody like James Forrest. There should literally be a James Forrest column, you know, just to, because we know what James Forrest is and what he offers. And we know he's going to be here till he retires, probably. I feel like it's always cruel putting him in any of these ones. But this is the 6 I've decided to go for, ranging from brilliant season to got to go. And then obviously a wee column as usual for people that we can't really judge because they've been injured the majority of the season. So we're going to try and place all 31. I think it's 31. It's 31 or 32 of our first team players here. Even the ones who haven't kicked a ball in a competitive game. So this will be fun. And I don't want to be here all day, so let's just get right into it. 1. Also, may I add, as we speak, you guys are voting. And I'm going to see by the time this is done, when hopefully there's a lot more participants where you're putting players. So stick around to the end and we'll see what the fans are saying. Let's just cut to the chase, shall we, and get this injuries column out the way. 4 players who I feel like don't really have a place right now to be critiqued because we haven't seen a hell of a lot of them, and that's down to being injured. Stephen Welsh, who got a couple of games at the start of the season and then dropped off with a major injury, came back for about half an hour and then dropped off with another injury. Abada, who was out since the first derby of the season and only returned in the second derby of the season. Hatate, who has been out for a long time, of course, with injuries. He was out at the start of the season with an injury as well. He barely made it back into the fold. And Mike Nawrocki, despite the praise that he's been getting over the past couple of games, we've barely seen him. I think his last game was at Pittodrie, way back in the opening 5 or so games of the season. He only returned very recently as well. I feel like it's been very hard to judge him. And I'm not going to sit and say after 2 games, oh, he's brilliant. You know, I'm just going to try and keep it real here. These are the 4 players who are void of any judgment for this. And hopefully by the end of the season, we'll be able to give them an honest judgment and where their position lies with this Celtic squad. Players who I do feel like have a lot to contribute, especially these 3, Abada, Hatate and Nawrocki. So by the end of the season, we'll see where they're standing. Let's try and get through this thick and fast, shall we? Because I don't want to last all day doing this. Joe Hart, I'm going to straight away put into average. Because Joe Hart's season for me has been one that has been very 2 different schools of thought. People either desperate to see him go, desperate to see him replaced, or people backing him up and saying that his season's actually been quite decent, bar the mistakes he's made here and there. His mistakes are really bad. They really are, and they have to be examined and they have to be looked at for what they are. At face value, they're shocking errors that shouldn't be getting made, and they have cost us at times. At the same time, I feel how bad he's been has been greatly exaggerated. I don't think Joe Hart has had that bad a season. He could have had a better season so far. But people saying that yeah, you could say he's finished. He is getting on a bit, but people saying that he's had a terrible season and this, that, next thing, I think it's a bit far. I think he's had an average season. Could be a hell of a lot better. It could have been a hell of a lot worse as well. So I'm going to stick him in average to start us off. He will be Celtic's number one until the end of the season. Let's just get one thing straight. I'm almost convinced of it. And I know a lot of people won't be happy with that, but he's an important figure at this club. And he's given it all to Celtic, and I have massive respect for him for that. And you know that. He's hanging up there with his fucking tap off, right? You know how much I love him. But I think that sometimes he gets exaggerated for how bad he is. I'm going to stick him in average. Well, here's an easy one. Yuki Kobayashi got to go. I mean, he's collecting dust, quite frankly. A very pointless signing, someone who was evidently not up to the standard of Celtic Football Club when he was first signed under Ange Postecoglou, and he's not had a sniff under Brendan Rodgers. We need to get him off the wage bill. No point in loaning him out. Just get rid of him. Cameron Carter-Vickers, a man whose season has been hampered by injuries. There's no denying that. He's not managed to get extensive runs in the team because every now and then he's had to drop out with fitness concerns or little niggling injuries. But aside from that, I think he's had a good season. I don't think he's been as good as what we've seen of him over the past 2 years. I think that's mostly down to these injuries, though. Some people might argue he still deserves to be in brilliant season. I don't think so, and I think that is just because he's dropping in and out the team, and he's had to nurse these and be kind of careful while he's playing. I would put him into good season, but we know that he's by far and miles the best centre half in Scotland. He's clear of anybody, and when he's back to full fitness and when he gets these extensive runs in the team with full fitness, he'll be the Cameron Carter-Vickers we know and love, but he's still put in a great shift. Still very important to Celtic. Good season for the big man. Shall we try and maybe do a rapid fire couple here? Alexandro Bernabe got to go once again, collecting dust. He made a brief cameo in the game against, was it Hearts, when we lost at Celtic Park? It was either that or the Motherwell game. One of the two. Came on for about 20 minutes, expected to change the game and get us a goal. Wasn't going to happen because he's not good enough. And he hasn't been since, once again, he arrived under Ange Postecoglou. Those 2 years ago coming up. Been a bit of a flop for Celtic. I would put him above Kobayashi in the pecking order if that does him any justice. But yeah, just let's get rid of him. Tony Ralston. You know what? I'd put him in average. I think that some people might argue underwhelming / poor, but for what his role is at Celtic, being the backup right back and only playing when Johnson isn't fit, really, I mean, he's played that role, and to say that he's been underwhelming at it or poor at it would probably be quite unfair. Joe Hart's obviously had a much better season than Ralston, but I'm trying to weigh up these things. Considering what their role is at the club. Joe Hart's the number one keeper who plays basically every game of every season. Ralston plays once in a blue moon. So for what he does, he's been average at it this season. Nothing spectacular, but nothing terrible. David Turnbull. Now, this one is going to split opinion because Turnbull's been one of our most prolific players this season if you're going off stats. You know, he's one of our top scorers. He's scored a fair chunk of goals. He's contributed in big moments when we've needed him. But I would have him and got to go until things change with the contract situation. What would be the point in keeping him around for the next 4 or 5 months when he has now fell down the pecking order with the returns of Rio Hatate, Paulo Bernardo's emergence, when we could make at least some money? I would rather make 800 grand now for David Turnbull than nothing in the summer and clear the wage bill a bit. So for me, until there's maybe a contract signed, he's a got to go. It's as simple as that. And you might not agree with it because you like him, he's a homegrown lad, he's chucked in some goals here and there. But really, what's the point in keeping him around? This is something that we can go through rapid now. There's not a lot of conversation to be had. Odin Thiago Holm, underwhelming, especially with what he showed in those first couple of games, where I thought there was a lot of promise and potential there with him, and the excitement of the background he was coming from, being one of these UEFA Wonder Kids and on these lists shortlisted for Wonder Kid of the Year and stuff like that. He has been underwhelming. Is that his fault? I wouldn't necessarily put it on him. I think that he's his kind of inclusions and then disclusions from the squad, you know, him being in and out hasn't helped him, but it has made him have an underwhelming season. There's no denying that. And I hope he has a big future at Celtic, and I hope he has something to offer. But does he? I don't know. There's no evidence to suggest that yet, but I'd put him in there. James McCarthy, I can't believe we're still talking about him. I can't believe he's still here. Why? I don't know. But it's January 2024. And James McCarthy is still in the Celtic squad tier list. God almighty, he's stealing a wage. Quan, got to go. I put him below James McCarthy, to be quite frank. Another pointless signing. A signing that made no sense. Clearly not good enough. Just get rid of him. It's never going to work out. Evidently, Brendan Rodgers doesn't see it. So he's got to go. And then finally, for this wee burst of players, I'm going to go for Tomoki, who I'm going to put in average. Once again, rating him in the same way that I rated Tony Ralston. For what his role is at Celtic, every time he's been asked to step up to the plate, he's given us a solid performance. Nothing spectacular, but absolutely far from terrible as well. He was unlucky to drop off with an injury just as he was starting to get some game time, which, you know, who knows, could have maybe bumped him up to good season if you were looking at relative to his performance time and stuff, his game time even. But average, I think, suits Tomoki Iwata, someone who I hope does get more time eventually at Celtic, but I'm going to drop him into average. This is what I was talking about with the James Forrest thing. Scott Bain deserves a role of his own, because, I mean, it's Scott Bain. He's just going to be our third choice keeper till we decide to change that, and I don't think we're going to change that anytime soon. So where do you put Scott Bain? It always feels criminal lining him up beside guys like Joe Hart, Ralston, but could you say underwhelming poor? Like, he just deserves his own bracket, Scott Bain. But listen, do you know what? Mind when he came in for a couple of games, when Joe Hart was suspended, he was actually not bad. 1 goal conceded in 2 games, made some good saves. So do you know what? He deserves his average slot for now. This is a guy who is impressing me more and more as the weeks go on, and I'm trying my best not to let recency bias take into account my rating of him here, but I'm putting him into good season, because I really like Paulo Bernardo, and I am all in on spending the money on him to make him a permanent Celtic player next year, especially if Matt O'Reilly does leave the club. I like him. I really like him, and this burst of form that he's going through just now, if that stays with him and he keeps that up going into the new year when the football returns, it's going to be a no-brainer for Celtic to sign him permanently. Tidy footballer, very good technical ability. Don't know how he was neglected from the domestic fold for so long. He was playing in the European games and actually playing not bad in them as well, but somehow he wasn't playing in domestic football until the last month. And what a mistake that was, because he's a really good footballer. I would say he's having a good season. Matt O'Reilly, I mean, let's just get things over and done with very quickly here. He's been the best player we've had this season. No doubt about it. No conversation to be had. Baller. Love him. Never want to see him go. One of my favourite players that I've seen at Celtic in recent years. He is levels beyond us and Scottish football, but cherish him while he's here and cherish this season he's having, because he's been unbelievable. You know what? I think there's an argument to be made that Callum McGregor could be put into average season, because I think for a long time, up until very recently, he was slacking in comparison to his normal standards. But the amount of football he plays, the amount of good work that he does do, and for, you know, putting in at least 6 or 7 out of 10s week in, week out, he still deserves to be in good season. I'm going to put him there. I was very tempted to put average because of the standards that Callum McGregor has set himself, and he can certainly be better and do better than what he's done this season. But he's getting on, he's getting older, and he's still playing that amount of football and still captaining the club to an exceptional level. And he deserves his flowers for that. Yeah, he might not be his best at the minute, but I hope he gets back to it, and I'm still going to put him in good season. Maybe that's just a bit of favouritism because it's Callum McGregor, but I want to see his level go up in the second half of the season, I really do. And we've seen signs of that in recent weeks. Man of the match performance against Rangers. So more of that, please, Callum, and maybe we'll get you back into brilliant season come match day 38. This is what I meant. Here we go, James Forrest, the James Forrest column. Where do I put James? Can I just put him and Bain in injuries? Because you'd think they're just always injured. I don't know where I'd put James Forrest. I mean, I'm just going to put him in here because he's not had the same. I think when Bain played his couple of games, Bain was actually decent, whereas Forrest, hasn't really offered anything when he's played. Once again, though, deserves his own call, and we know what we're getting with James. And I mean it with all due respect, but I think James Forrest himself knows his position as a Celtic player now. And that's contributing every now and then when he's needed. And that's about it, really. Listen, I don't think underwhelming or poor sums up James Forrest's season, but I'm just going to put him there. Lewis Palma has been brilliant. I really liked him. Would I say he's had a brilliant season? I think the stats and the numbers would suggest that he has. I still think there's a lot of work for Lewis Palma to do to be up there with a Matt O'Reilly. In all honesty, I would put him in good season, because there's still a lot of things that Lewis Palma does that need polishing, that need fixed, that are still quite annoying. And some games he doesn't play that well, but he makes up for it when he's scoring and when he's proper on one and he's singing from the same hymn sheet as everybody else. He is an unplayable talent. He's really, really good. But I would put him in good season for now, because I think that there is still inconsistency there with Lewis Palma, if I was to give my total honest opinion. If you've been watching me throughout his entire Celtic career so far, you'll know I'm a massive fan of him. I really, really like him. But I don't think he's been Matt O'Reilly levels of good, or on that kind of position yet. But he definitely can be by the end of the season. He's had a solid campaign so far. He's been a real joy to watch. And I just want him to iron out those little kind of rough patches in his game. This is one that might get me hung in the comments section. I'm putting Kyogo right at the top of average. Kyogo hasn't had a great season by any stretch of the imagination. And I will die on that hill. As much as I love him, he needs to be better. His goal against Rangers was unbelievable. His goal, and who did we play the week before? He scored another cracker at Parkhead the week before, Livingston. His goal against Livingston, cracker. There are signs there that he's going to slowly get back to his best. But if you're judging Kyogo's season from start to right now on this very day, he has not been the Kyogo we know and love. And whether you think that's the manager's fault, whether you think it's his own fault, that's the truth. He's not had a brilliant season this year. I think he scored 7-8 goals maybe in the league, which is behind the numbers you want your star striker to be scoring. It's a gutter that he's missing the Asia Cup, because I'd love to see him get to go there, but hopefully he uses that as his tool and his motivation to come out and be the Kyogo we know and love in the second half of the campaign. And if we are signing another striker, hopefully that puts the dynamite under his backside as well to get firing back to his best. He's had an average season, Kyogo, with a couple of worldies in there. But we all love him and we all know he can do better. That's the truth. Yang, I've been honest about this many times, and as I said, I'm sticking to my opinion in this video, and you might not agree, but for me, I would have him and got to go. I just don't see it. I see glimpses of a talented player there. I see glimpses of a guy who has potential. That's not to say he can't be loaned out to try and aid his development. I just don't see the quality that a player at Celtic Football Club needs, in my honest opinion. I think we've seen far more bad spells of play from Yang than good, and that's just my honest opinion. I really like the boy, and I love his work ethic, his desire. He's always busting a gut on the park, and I can respect that about a player, but sometimes you've got to value the actual quality of a footballer over the likability of a football player, and I think a loan move could maybe do him wonders if it was to the right place. But for me, I don't see the evidence of a future Celtic star quite yet. Right, let's fire through a few rapid fire, shall we? I'm going to come back to a certain couple of people. Let's just get a couple out of the way here. Benjamin Siegrist, got to go. There's no denying that, no doubt about that. His Celtic career has been over for a long time, it seems. It's just we're kind of prolonging it at this point. Marco Tilio, got to go. It's been made evidently clear that he doesn't have a future at Celtic. He's back, he's fit. I think he's actually maybe going to the Asia Cup with Australia. I'm not entirely sure, but it's just not going to happen for him, so we may as well cut our losses there. It's not like we spent a fortune on him either, which is a shame. I really was excited to see a bit of Marco Tilio because I heard good things about him, but it doesn't look as though that's going to happen. And until that happens, he's got to go for me. And then finally, we'll get Nat Phillips shoved in here. Got to go. And do you know what? No point in having a conversation, because he should be going. If the original reports were true about a 6-month loan deal, surely his time as Celtic's up. Rest in peace. You will be forgotten. Which leaves us with the last few players that we're going to try and go through here very quickly. I would once again put into average I think that O is somebody who started the season in a really sticky wicket and a bit of a tricky position about his Celtic future. I was getting to the point where I was losing patience with him. But then he started scoring a few. They showed that he does have value at Celtic. But once again, nothing spectacular. Now, people are going to look at this and without listening to the context. I am not saying that Kyogo and O have had the same kind of season. Kyogo's obviously been better than O. I am trying to rate them at face value for what they offer and what their purpose is. O, as a backup striker, has been average at his job. Just like Kyogo's been average at his job as a starting striker. I want O to kick on. I want O to start getting more goals for Celtic. And hopefully that happens in the second half of the season. Dyson Maeda, who is also somebody that's had a bit of a tricky time with injuries. And because I'm tempted to put him in here. I am. But at the same time, I feel like he's still had more football than most people. Of course, he dropped off with that injury against Atletico Madrid, which was in November. And once again, I feel like I'm just sticking a lot of people in average. Maeda's been nothing special for me this season. If anything, he's been more annoying to me this season than anything. But I love him to bits. I want him to show what he showed, last year when Ange was getting the absolute best out of him. He doesn't have the most technical ability you're ever going to see in a football player. We know that, but he can make up for it in other ways. And I just want to see more of that in the second half of the season. He hasn't been a disappointment, but I just want to see more levels from him and a reason to believe that he should be starting for Celtic every week, because at this moment in time he's slipped down my pecking order. I would be going Abad and Palma as my starting wingers as it stands, so I want him to get that conversation, that argument back into being one of the starters. It was a great goal against St Mirren. Keep that sort of play up and you'll be back into having a good season, son. I'm sticking to what I said. Mikey Johnson got to go. The fairy tale is a fairy tale. That's what it always will be to me. And listen, I give him massive respect and massive credit for what he's done in the last few weeks, because I think he's actually been decent. But it's been 7 coming up 8 years. My God, the story has to end. We're just going to wait for his next injury or the next time where he's not playing, because he's not going to force his way into starting for Celtic. It's time to just cut ties. Maybe he's got used from here till the end of the season, to be fair. But that wouldn't change my opinion on got to go in my eyes. Right, let's go rapid fire, shall we? Alistair Johnson, I would say just about makes it into good season. I think he's played poorly on a couple of occasions, but I think in general he's still been solid. I still think he's given a lot. I don't think he's been as good as what he was last season, but on that note, at this point we only signed him at this point last season. In that 6 months he played for us, from January to the end of the season, I had him up here. So he has dropped down. He has. So I still think he's had a good season, though. I still think he's been fairly fine. And I think the average would be a bit disrespectful to him. I love Alistair Johnson, one of the favourite players in the squad for me. So, Greg Taylor. I'm not letting the last couple of games. He's been poor. He has been. There's no denying it. He has been underwhelming and poor this season. And there's a reason we're talking about wanting a new left back. And I know he's played fairly well in the last few weeks. He's kind of getting back to his best. But he's been, in terms of the whole season, he's been underwhelming. And he needs to give himself a kick up the backside if there's a new left back coming in. And then finally, Lagerbielke. I'm going to just put him in. It's not even fair to say he's been underwhelming or poor. It's not been his fault he's been left out the side, but I'm going to put him in here because I'm not convinced he has to go, even though it looks as though he will be going. I'm not convinced he has to, so I'm just going to put him in underwhelming / poor for now. And then finally, the only other player that makes it into brilliant season for me so far in this campaign is Liam Scales, because Liam Scales has been brilliant. Listen, I don't think he's the answer to Celtic's defensive problems. I don't even necessarily think he should be a starting centre-back for Celtic for the years to come. I think there is better than Liam Scales. But when you consider what he's came from being somebody who should have been out the door in the summer to now being undroppable at this point, he deserves a credit for that. He's not been perfect. He's not been, Paolo Maldini. I know we say Scales Dini for a laugh and all that, but he has been absolutely superb and he deserves his flowers for it. I would put him in brilliant season, and there's hardly anybody going to disagree with that, I think. So there is my final list, which I think just puts into perspective at this halfway point how, yeah, we've been getting a lot better in recent weeks, but how many players still need to take it up a notch and give their absolute best at Celtic. I think that's just kind of highlights, the hot and cold of this Celtic side so far this season. It's only how many is that? 10, only the 10 players I think that need to leave. Call it a clear out if you like. But there is my final list, which I'm now going to compare with the list that the people have been voting for so far. So, as time of record, this is going to go on, and keep up with the Celtic the Thunder Twitter to see the final results. We've had almost 4,000 votes, which is spanned across around 140 participants, which of course is a very small amount of Celtic supporters compared to the 60,000 that sit in the stadium every week. But this is kind of the list you can go by average rating, which doesn't really work right, because, for example, look, Liel Abada, apparently he's in got to go when only 3 people have said got to go. Don't know why the 3 people think he's got to go. But, for example, 111 people have said injured, so won't judge. But for some reason, they've shoved them up here. It's kind of flawed. This is a new thing on Tier Maker, which I actually really like, and hopefully they iron that out. So if we just sort it by most votes, I feel like most people are in agreement with me on most players. Only 2 players have made it to brilliant season, and it's the same 2 that I said. Matt O'Reilly, who for some reason got to go, one person, wonder if they're a Rangers fan, and Liam Scales as well, who makes it into the brilliant season category. Only 2. And I'm going to try and put mine side by side here. Give me a moment. Ignore all my tabs and stuff up here. This is it side by side as it currently stands. People still voting, as you can see. But most people are in agreement. And Kyogo's made up to good season. 74 people have said good season for Kyogo, and 30 agreeing with me on average. Callum McGregor makes it in. Who else? Let's see. Paulo Bernardo makes it in. I think we're mostly in agreement. We drop into average. And there's Alistair Johnson only makes it into average for most people. I've been generous. Look at that. I've been generous with Alistair Johnson because only 11 people so far have said that he's had a good season. And obviously I put him in a good season. So that's interesting to see. Most people agreeing with Maida being in average as well. David Turnbull makes into average for most people, but there is also 32 people saying that he's got to go. Only 2 people make it into underwhelming and poor. And Greg Taylor, funnily enough, makes it into average, and I've got him in underwhelming poor. So there you go. There's the kind of side by side. You don't need me to sit and explain it all. You can go and vote. You can join in. The link will be in the description, but there's the final list and time of recording side by side. I'm on the right, you're on the left. So that does it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed. I'm going to wrap things up pretty quickly because this has been a long one. So like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.